unrepresentative, and in time, of course, profession will become increasingly unrepresentative and elitist. This is a tragedy. It is now clear that many in education, and some in the profession, and some in this building, see this retreat to a smaller, more elite profession as the only defence against some of the pressures that the profession is facing, and the only way of protecting income and status. That is wrong as well, and should be resisted. It is sad for another reason, because I would argue that it's precisely those students with diverse backgrounds, students who are carers, students who have a particular fear of debt, students who are irreverent towards the status quo because they are not part of it, who will be gently and quietly excluded from the future of education, and therefore from the future of practice. This is a very, very serious matter, particularly at a time when it is precisely those students with those skills and that background that I would argue are necessary to address some of the pressing social and political issues that are going to face this country over the coming period. I think it can be argued that, if one wants to, that it's precisely this agenda of exclusion that is driving some of the changes that are taking place in education and take place in the practice. I think we have a duty to resist those things, and there are many ways in which we can do it. I think what is required and what must come out of tonight is a fundamental shift in the power balance between students, education and practice in favour of those students, precisely in favour of those students who are being excluded. The mechanisms have been discussed over many years, but very few of them have been put in place. They've been resisted for reasons which I don't understand, and it's no longer tenable to resist them. They include more flexibility in how you graduate, how you become an architect, speeding up, slowing down educational processes, systems based on the acquisition of credit, not of years. Credit for things that one does in life which relate to architecture. Why, if you run a restaurant, can't you be credited for that as part of your architectural education in terms of management? Abandoning the year-long project, self-directed projects, students who practice, practices to teach. It's important.
Okay, third of our ranters tonight is one of the project coordinators for Project Context, which most of you in this room are familiar with. He won the RIBA Education Trust Award in 2008 and the Royal West of England Academy Student Bursary for 2007. This has enabled him to complete his Broyer Thought in Bristol exhibition project at the Architecture Centre in Bristol. His research has then been published in several regional and national journals. Please welcome to the box, Max Gane.
Okay, I have 4 points to make in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. So hopefully get through them very comfortably. 1, good architects don't necessarily make good tutors. What does make a good tutor? In my opinion, it's the ability to understand and bring out the potential of their student, to allow and encourage each student to produce work that is reflective of their interests and ability. What makes a bad tutor? Relentless criticism, excused by the argument that the student needs to develop a thick skin, disregard for the interests of their students in favour of their own agenda, or someone who is too busy running their practice to give time to their students. I would argue that teaching is a completely different skill set to practising architecture, and it should not be assumed that because someone is talented at one, they are equally good at the other. Whether or not somebody is a good architect is a very poor indication of whether they would make a good or bad tutor. 2. Studying architecture doesn't make you an architect. Typical architecture course is 3 years of undergraduate, 2 years postgraduate, and a year or 2 of work experience in between. Considerable amount of time, but at the end of that, you come out and you cannot describe yourself as an architect. Why is that? Because the knowledge and skills necessary to work as an architect are learnt on the job. You could go so far as suggesting that all the skills you need as an architect could be learned on the job, bringing into question the need for schools in the first place, or at least their relations to the profession, which leads to point 3, which is that the work placement system does not exist in architecture. So if a degree of work experience is necessary to become an architect, why is the graduate left to their own devices to find it? The institutional safety net is essentially replaced by a piece of paper. In other professions to which architecture is quite frequently compared, such as law or medicine, there are systems in place to facilitate the transition to from university to the profession. Universities work in partnership with hospitals or solicitors' offices, pairing graduates with vacant positions. In some instances, there is a regulatory obligation for professionals to take on school leavers. As far as I know, there is no such system in place for architecture graduates. A number of schools have taken this on themselves to initiate this, but there is no nationwide framework for graduates to find work. I think this is a serious shortcoming, given that it is at work where architects truly learn their trade. Point number 4, schools are different, but the qualifications are the same. This year I visited 22 schools as part of the Project Concepts project, and it became very clear to me that there's a great level of diversity throughout the schools of England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. For example, the school may be an isolated faculty on its own, or it may have a proximity to an arts department, an engineering department, or another department. This directly affects the facilities available to the students, the type and frequency of crossover between disciplines, and ultimately the experience, skills and knowledge gained by the students. Despite this, all students will leave with more or less the same Part 1 or Part 2 qualification. Seems that we may be missing a trick by not capitalising on this diversity.
Thank you.
The last of our ranters has been shortlisted for bronze and silver RIBA President medals and was listed as the UK's top 6 graduating students in the BD class of 2009. He's written for the AJ and has lectured at the University of Greenwich, and he's currently a designer and researcher at 00 and also co-editor of an open content fanzine about architecture, economics, technology and society called Makeshift. Please welcome to the box Alastair Parvin.
So I have 2 minutes which I want to use to suggest one idea, and then I'm going to cheat. The idea is this, that paradoxically, there may never have been a better time to be a designer, which is a perverse thing to say. As much as school's rhetoric might shroud the fact, of course, the fundamental assumption of architecture education is it leads you to become an architect. It's structurally what it's still designed to do. And our education, of course, led us towards a market that no longer exists. The market collapsed. And it's not, let's kill that myth, it's not a cyclical dip. What 2008 exposed was the fact that what we come to call architecture was in fact, very often, the specific business of designing financial assets and cultural icons for one particular sector, which was the speculative property or land value sector, this bubble of debt and inflated house prices. My contention is that given the collapse of that market, it is no longer practical or moral to be asking a generation of intelligent, socially aware people to spend their time and now money producing exquisite drawings of trout farms on Mars, imaginary, beautiful drawings of imaginary buildings, all and putting them in their portfolio, all in competition for jobs which either don't exist or are heartbreakingly, mind-numbingly dull by comparison. But the paradox is, before we kind of get into this incredibly negative cycle, the paradox is that even